I was reading a Chief Outsiders article earlier today that I got to off of your LinkedIn feed, Grant, and it was basically what you just said there, right? And you talked about like lack of definition between the different levels, what those levels are, what the handoffs are. And there's always been a massive gap between what marketing thinks is a great lead and what sales wants to act on. And there's this big chasm or gap in the middle, right? So, David, how does it help solve that gap? How does the data and the intelligence that's coming in help marketers determine what is a good qualified lead to turn over to sales? And how does it help sales accept those leads and understand the value of what's coming in?
I'll say AI and CRM, I don't think is actually the problem in this case. I think Grant talked about this idea of growth as the goal. I just hired a new CMO who's been here for 2 or 3 months. She's absolutely a full funnel marketer. She thinks about how it all hangs together from intent all the way through to close one deal and following that as the customer, adopts whatever technology you're selling to them. And that the sales and marketing engine needs to be way more connected. This idea that a CMO creates a lead and hands it off and sales picks it up. And there's always going to be a gap as to what people think the quality of a lead looks like. If you convince sellers they play a role in nurturing as part of full funnel marketing, and you convince marketers that they play a role in negotiating at the tail end of a sales cycle, they all have roles throughout that cycle, and you're building collaboration from sales and marketing. They show up with different skill sets, but the whole funnel needs to be something that both sides are engaged in.
So, Grant, I know you've got a ton of ideas on this, right? Forever, there's been so many CMOs that have felt, and I talk to them on a daily basis, they feel like they have imposter syndrome. They're only as good as their last MQL. They're looked upon as one of the biggest cost centers in the company. And what David just described is a way that CMOs have an opportunity to really step up and become full funnel marketers and nurture leads all the way through. And in the world of ABM, by very definition, we want relationships early. Early relationships are not bank qualified, right? So they're typically not picked up by the sales department. So Dave, you were saying, sales have got to nurture earlier and marketers have got to, stay connected much, much longer all the way through to close that gap. How do we do that? How do we take the step forward to make that happen? Because it's not happening in a lot of companies right now.
Well, to me, it starts with the mindset, as David described, in selecting the CMO that's a revenue marketer. We are in it together. If it doesn't lead from opportunity to close one revenue, it doesn't matter. And that's an educational process. It's a mindset process. It's also an empowerment that the CMO is part that C should not only be cheap, but, customer minded. This all should be thinking about. I know David's great background in voice the customer. Like, it's the whole journey you've got to think about from their first trying to think, do I want to deal with your company? So you've got to show up. This market has a lot to do with that, with AEO, GEO. And then you have to engage and you have to be responsive. You have to have handoffs from marketing to sales and sales to implementation and have SLAs across the board. And you have to, measure everything, see what works and continue to iterate. So it's kind of an all-in mindset I like to describe where, or maybe early in my career, somebody was celebrating a volume. I would rather celebrate, velocity and value. Volume's good, but getting close one deals and making the bookings and revenue of your public company targets that you have to report even more pressure. That's the key. And if you have that mindset is you're a business person first. You just happen to wear the marketing hat. That's why a lot of us that help mid-market companies at Chief Outsiders, we call ourselves Chief, growth officers or growth orchestrators, because that's what the company needs most, profitable growth. And so you got to make sure that everything you invest in has a good ROI. But the alignment, that's what you're alluding to, Steve, and I know Dave's experience. You've got to continually work on the alignment and managing good collaborative communications so that you could drive together and go farther.